What's up, gang? Do y'all remember how hunters gain the ability to just stay invisible forever with the Void 3.0 update? Well, with this build today, we're going to be cranking it up to 11 and becoming an absolute nightmare for the enemies of the last city. As promised in the last video, here's my Gyrfalcons Hauberk PVE build guide, and just in case you missed my last one where I go over the changes, I'll have a link in the description for you. But anyway, here's a quick recap. In patch 6.3.01, Bungie made it so that instead of giving a damage boost after being invisible, Gyrfalcons Hauberk now gives you volatile rounds, which opens up the door to a number of possibilities which we'll go over in a bit. Meanwhile, if you do a finisher from stealth, now you get the old damage boost and you still get the reserve overshield for you and your nearby allies, and the range on that is pretty generous. To start this build off, you're going to want to run Stylish Executioner to allow you to continuously chain invisibility from killing volatile and weakened targets. This will also give you 2 fragment slots. For your second aspect, you're going to want Vanishing Step for the extra 2 fragment slots and another easy way to go invisible and gain volatile rounds. On to the fragments. So the 2 most important fragments for this build are going to be Echo of Obscurity, which is going to give you Invis on Finisher, which synergizes incredibly well with Gyrfalcon's ability to give a damage boost and reserve overshield on Finisher. And Echo of Undermining, which allows your grenades to weaken targets, which allows you to do more damage and gives you another way to activate Stylish Executioner. The next 2 aspects can be swapped out if you have the stats for it, and I'll have suggestions for replacements afterwards. So I went with Echo of Domineering to offset some of the discipline you lose going with Echo of Undermining, but if you have really high discipline, you don't actually need this. I also went with Echo of Dilation just for the extra mobility since my armor sucks and I needed a shorter dodge cooldown, but you can also sub this out for something else. So the first substitution that seemed the most obvious to me initially was Echo of Starvation, so that you could gain Devour whenever you picked up an Orb of Power, as this would make you the ultimate Void Hunter combining all of the Void keywords together. However, I realized this isn't as reliable as what I ended up building, since Echo of Harvest seems very finicky with volatile rounds on, and then keeping Devour up while going from encounter to encounter can also be really hard, but if you are in a situation where you can get Devour going, you're pretty invincible. Another good alternative to consider is Echo of Remnants, to extend your Vortex Grenade duration for increased weaken time on bosses and champions. The last alternative fragment I would take is Echo of Persistence for the increased Invis, Overshield, and Devour duration. If you do decide to go with Devour, I would actually say that this is essential as Devour just doesn't last long enough in my opinion. So next up is your abilities, and you're going to want to go Gambler's Dodge so you can get your Weakening Smoke Bomb back up. I also highly recommend Vortex Grenades as it allows you to weaken targets with your grenade for a longer duration. Now for your super, you're going to want to run the Deadfall version of Shadow Shot, aka the Big Tether, since it has the shortest cooldown while still providing you a really long duration 30% weakening effect. Now that we've got all our abilities and aspects and fragments out of the way, let's talk about the weapons, as it will also help explain the mods we choose later on in the video. Okay, so for our primary weapon at the core of the build, we're going to be using the new seasonal ritual weapon, Velos X, as it has so much synergy with Gyrfalcons and Void debuffs. As you can all probably tell from my last build, I absolutely love Repulsor Brace and I've been trying to find something that would allow me to use it on my hunter. And the moment I saw this weapon, I knew I had to figure out a way to abuse it. And here we are. Velos X has Repulsor Brace and Golden Tricorn. Golden Tricorn gives a 15% damage boost for 6 seconds on kill, which is respectable, but then if you get an ability kill with the matching element, while the timer is still up, the timer goes up to 10 seconds, and you get a massive 50% damage boost. And with it being a pulse rifle, it's going to be in the seasonal artifact pretty much all the time. Specifically this season, pulse rifles are anti-barrier. For our next weapon, I chose to run Wither Horde in the kinetic slot as it helps boost our DPS by a ton and is really easy to use since the catalyst gives it auto-loading holster. Just be mindful that after the nerfs, you're really going to want to make sure you're getting direct impacts with the Blight it launches for the full duration and damage. We also have 2 grenade launcher mods in the artifact this season, with Weakening Clear and Unstoppable Grenade Launcher, which means you can also run Lord Kelvin's Basilisk to become a champion stunning monster. Now my last weapon might be a bit controversial, But I think Chain of Command can really shine here in match game activities where there's lots of solar and arc shields, as you're mostly mono void with this build, since it has adaptive munitions and allows you to deal with those shields in match game activities. And you can also run Osmosis to make it void and give it volatile round. When you pair it with the Wither Horde damage, you're going to be melting those shields like they're not even there. Obviously, based on your fire team, you can swap around the heavy weapon to a linear or a rocket, especially if you don't need the adaptive munitions to cover any elemental damage type gaps your fire team might have. I actually have a corrective measure with rewind rounds and high impact reserves that I really enjoy using when I can, especially since volatile works best with rapid fire DPS weapons over high burst damage weapons like rockets and linear. So for mods, I'm doing something quite a bit different here, but we're gonna run as many firepower mods as possible. Firepower gives you grenade energy back when you throw a grenade while charged with light. I'd say you want to run at least 2, but I actually run 4, and it's glorious, giving most of your grenade energy back, so you almost always have a grenade ready to proc Golden Tricorn ×2 on Arvelis X, or at the very least another source of weaken to help melt higher health targets. Since Firepower is a Charge with Light mod, you will need a way to become Charged with Light, so I run Empowered Finisher, which gives you a Charge with Light stack for using a finisher. And it only costs 1 energy, meaning you can slot it in almost anywhere. And it synergizes really well with Echo of Obscurity and Gyrfalcons. Now, there is a drawback. It's going to cost 1/10 of your super, but honestly I don't think it's a high cost to pay since Deadfall is on the shortest cooldown, and we have so much access to weakening in our grenades and our melee that you could argue with the increased uptime it's actually worth losing some of the weakening that we would have with Tether. We do also have weakening clear this season, which will give you that 30% debuff while Wither Horde is on the boss or champion you're fighting. However, that means you will have to drop one of the firepower mods. The next mod you're really going to want to run for a little added safety is Healthy Finisher, which will give you a chunk of health back whenever you do a finisher. I originally considered using Reactive Pulse for the overshield while using a finisher, but I realized I would sometimes lose a stack of Charged with Light when using this due to taking some damage while near an enemy and then not realizing I had lost my Charged with Light stack. I would use my grenade and then have to wait the full duration for it to come back. Also, with this build, you should be able to get an overshield from Repulsor Brace and or be invisible when you go in anyway. I also noticed that Gyrfalcon's overshield doesn't actually always work as stated and will give you another overshield while you're doing the finisher if you already have an overshield on, instead of giving you a reserve overshield to activate after you use your class ability. To the best of my ability to test in a timely fashion, this seemed to be what was happening. And I don't really mind this, as the extra free shield while doing a finisher helps a lot in content where enemies hit harder anyway. I also didn't get a chance to test this with any of my friends to see if the overshield properties changed in terms of how it worked with your fire team getting an overshield. I'll probably do a short on that once someone I know is online and I can actually test it with them. Lastly, I would also highly recommend running a bomber mod if you can slide it into your cloak for an extra boost to your grenade generation whenever you dodge next to an enemy. Alright, now that we've gone over all the boring stuff like the mods and the weapons and all that other stuff, here's some quick gameplay guidance and a couple tips. Ideally, the gameplay loop is something like this. You're going to weaken an enemy, go invis, finish said enemy off for the reserve overshield and damage boost and charge with light and volatile, then kill an enemy for Golden Tricorn ×1 and a Repulsor Brace overshield, then get a grenade kill for Golden Tricorn ×2, which will also give you volatile rounds and stealth back while refunding a good chunk of your grenade from the firepower mod. Rinse and repeat with plenty of finishers to stay charged with light and keep healing. Yo, I can't even say this with a straight face because this just sounds so broken. Like, how do you die? Excuse me. Sorry about that. This might sound like a lot, but the build kind of really just flows into itself. As long as you're getting finishers consistently, you should pretty much always have grenades up for Golden Tricorn, or just to weaken and damage high health targets like majors with non-matching shields, champions, and bosses. All the while, you've got almost constant uptime on volatile rounds, multiple ways to stay alive, be it Repulsor Brace, Stealth, Healthy Finisher, or the Overshield from Gyrfalcons. This build has it all. Because this build has a heavy reliance on grenades and finishers, I would recommend you get your discipline, resilience, and mobility as high as possible in that order. I'm really excited to try this build out in GMs to really see how it does, but I was really enjoying it in the seasonal activity, which always has you a few levels down this season, and it was pretty effective soloing the Nightfall as well. So let me know how you would make this build better, and maybe we'll do an updated version towards the end of the season. Thanks for watching, stay blessed, and have a great day. Will you be my lover? I need ya, I need ya, I need ya, I need ya, I need ya.